There is a new trailer for Westworld Season 3, Episode 2 and beyond. Let's break it down and see what we can learn. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. I'll be covering Westworld Season 3 in full, so if you want episode breakdowns, explanations, live discussions and much more, please click the subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen and the bell icon. Rather than doing a trailer just for Episode 2, HBO have released one covering, in their words, the weeks ahead. So we see images not just from next week's episode, but from later in the season too. That said, I think the bulk of what we see here will be in the next episode or two. Okay, so what can we learn? The first set of images and the audio that seems to go with them are probably actually from before the events of Episode 1. Most of that happened about 3 months after Dolores had arrived on the mainland. She'd had time to establish herself, meet Liam Dempsey Jr. and so on. But now we're seeing what happened just days after she got to the mainland, at Arnold's house. When she arrived, she was in Charlotte Hale's body, and one of the first things she seemed to have done is rebuild her own body, and then put one of the host consciousnesses into Charlotte's body. We saw that she had done this at the end of Season 2 when she brings Bernard back, and by the time we get to Season 3, the host disguised at Charlotte Hale had already infiltrated Delos. But here we see that whoever Dolores has put into Charlotte's body needed a bit of time to adjust. There's the confusion at having been woken up after having died on Westworld, the culture shock of being in the real world, and then that of being in a new, different body. We see them staring at themselves in the mirror, asking who and where they are, and so on. This isn't an easy transition. Dolores shows them who they need to pretend to be. This, of course, brings us back to the question we've had since Season 2. Who did Dolores bring with her? Who did she put in Charlotte's body? We don't know yet, but this is clearly a more sensitive soul than someone like Angela, say, someone she trusts completely, given the mission they are about to go on, and someone she cares about, judging from the body language. So the favourites at this stage have to be Teddy or possibly Clementine. Whoever it is, it seems that Dolores talks them around, and despite their reservations, they do go ahead with the plan to infiltrate Delos. Skipping forward 3 months to the end of Episode 1, we left Dolores lying badly wounded in Caleb's arms. Judging from these pictures, he seems at first to try to administer CPR, assuming that she is human, but at some point he will discover that she isn't. He seems pretty open-minded about these kinds of things, happily sitting down companionably next to his robot George at lunchtime, and, as we saw from other trailers, he seems to help her rebuild herself. This will be the first time that she has encountered a normal human, not one of the elite 1% who visit the park, or someone connected to Delos, and the first time a human has proactively and unselfishly tried to help her. Even Arnold used her in the end, getting her to shoot herself. In any event, they team up. She will now be trying to get to Serac, the only person who seems to have real access to Rehoboam, the supercomputer running the world by algorithms. And as he says in the trailer, I'm with her. Meanwhile, Bernard, as we saw, is heading back to Westworld. He knows that on his own, with a huge manhunt out for him, he can't possibly stop Dolores. But he knows who can. Maeve. If you remember, Maeve has the power now to not only max out her own stats and abilities, but also control other hosts, rewriting their coding and giving them instructions. She doesn't need to get to a computer to do this, she just needs to be close enough to a host to communicate silently through the mesh network, the sort of host Wi-Fi system. The advantage for Bernard, back on the island of course, is that he has allies there, or an ally perhaps. Stubbs, the park security guy, basically admitted he was a host at the end of Season 2, and was the one who let Dolores out of the park. He and Bernard always had a positive working relationship, and, as with Dolores, I think we can trust him not to give Bernard away. Keeping undercover will still be quite a hard task for Bernard though, so expect a few confrontations with zealous Delos guards. It looks like the old Westworld park itself might be abandoned. In reality, it was destroyed in the California fires last year, which makes sense. Thrill seekers may still want to go to the parks, but visiting the site of a massacre would be something different and probably detract from the immersion of the experience. So any hosts salvaged from the massacre will be reallocated to different parks. Which brings us to Maeve. At the end of episode 1, we saw that she was now in Warworld, one of the other parks on the island, one focused on the resistance in Nazi-occupied Europe during World War II. She may have appeared quite confused in that short clip, but here, presumably not long afterward, she seems to be back into her old ways of making the hosts freeze all motor functions and just walking through. Incidentally, everyone except Maeve here seems to have frozen, so perhaps there are no human guests in here yet. Anyway, from previous trailers, she seems to go and find Hector and drive off with him. The big question for Maeve in this season is what her motivation will be. In Season 1, it was figuring out that she was a host and then trying to get out of the park, and then in Season 2, it was all about finding her child and then getting her to safety. What will she want this time? We'll see. I suspect we'll see the first part of all of this, though, her in Warworld, in Episode 2 of the season. But at some point, she seems to find herself before Serac. Remember, he's the guy that Dolores is now trying to hunt down, and he asks Maeve to hunt down Dolores. It's hard to see Maeve doing what he says just because he wants her to, but she does seem to get on board. The most intriguing thing here, though, is that Serac, the head guy of Insight, says that he has waited many years for Maeve and Dolores to arrive. This strongly suggests that he was linked somehow to Delos, or that he and Rehoboam are playing a very long and meta game here. Just how much control does Rehoboam have? I'll look at that in another video coming soon. Finally, let's look at William, the man in black. He survived the massacre in Season 2, but now he will be a broken man. His wife committed suicide. He killed his own daughter mistakenly, and everything he spent decades building up, Delos, the parks, the data, everything has come crashing down around his ears. He will not be in a good place mentally at the start of Season 3. We see him in what looks like his old home, shooting at the mirror and lying down in the bath fully clothed, as if trying to recreate his wife's suicide, the event that precipitated his own personal spiral. I don't think we should necessarily take all of this at face value. This is Westworld, after all, because in other videos we seem to see him in some kind of hospital or prison. Anyway, this season seems to see William reaching the very bottom after all he has been through. What else do we have? Well, there are a few shots of Martin Connells, the Insight security guy that Dolores replaced with a host version in Episode 1. Again, we don't know which host is in there, perhaps Angela or someone like that, but they clearly will be involved later on. We also see Dolores and Caleb apparently going back to Liam Dempsey Jr. This probably won't be too hard for them now they have his security guy on their side, and we'll see another flashback of Caleb's time in the military. Again, he appears not to be in a regular army uniform here, and is on his own rather than with his friend Francis, so perhaps we'll see how Francis actually died, maybe on a Black Ops or private expedition. Whatever it was, it clearly shaped who Caleb is now. And finally we have, without any context, a shot of Arnold's son, who died tragically, spurring Arnold on to push Dolores towards sentience. Bernard will remember him, so perhaps we're going deeper into his past and Cornerstone. In Deep Geek, we'll be covering Season 3 of Westworld in full. The link to my Westworld Season 3 playlist is on the left of your screen, so please click on that if you want more episode breakdowns, discussions and theory videos about this season. Or if you'd like to support In Deep Geek, or get access to some of the content I create exclusively for my patrons, please click on the link on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.